Well, good morning everyone. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion, and we're coming to you from Taos, New Mexico, northern part of New Mexico. And today I'm wearing a different pair of sunglasses because we're doing a special Patreon sunglass vlog for Donna Gutierrez. And what we're going to do today is there is a very, very influential, legendary person that called Taos their home and is buried here. And I drove all the way out here just to see them. So let's go visit the great Dennis Hopper. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. I don't think this is the kind of cemetery you would just stumble upon. This is way out there, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I believe Dennis Hopper said that he wanted to be buried out here not only because he loved Taos, but he didn't want people, he didn't want to take the chance that somebody would come grave robbing or anything, so. People are crazy, you never know, you know. So you have to expect, as legendary as Dennis was, that he probably gets a lot of visitors out here. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was in Giant, Apocalypse Now, Blue Velvet, Easy Rider. That's a pretty far-spanning mass of cultures and people to appeal to. Now, Dennis Hopper has a pretty interesting story because he was born and raised in Dodge City, Kansas, yeah, right after the Dust Bowl. And so he said until he went to the movie theaters, he didn't even see sunlight really because it was always so cloudy. You could just kind of get a little glimmer of a glow in the sky. But he loved movies, and he vowed one day he was going to find a way to be a part of that, whether it be an actor or whatever it was. He wanted to be a part of making what he was watching on the screen. So at the age of 18, Dennis Hopper, wanting to be an actor, finding that that was probably maybe the easiest way in, is what he said, he went to Hollywood, got an agent, and was sent out to audition for the movie Medic. And came back from his audition, told his agent, hey, I know I booked that. The guy said, there's no way. That's everybody in Hollywood is out there for that part. You're not gonna get that. And he got it. And he not only was so good in Medic that it was a hit, but he had, the day after it came out, 7 studios wanting to sign him and give him a contract. Now, his performance in Medic was a big deal because he was portraying an epileptic, and he did it so well and so effortless. Maybe not effortless, but they said he was so natural. The head of Columbia actually said he hadn't seen anybody that natural since Montgomery Clift. So when Dennis Hopper went in for his first meeting, he went into Columbia, and he sat across from the head of Columbia, and he said, what have you been doing? And Dennis said, well, I've been doing Shakespeare down in San Diego. And he said, Harry said, oh no, you can't be doing that. That ruins movies. We got to get you out of there. We got to put you in classes. We got to get you doing other stuff. And Dennis Hopper just said, I went from being nervous to being offended. And he said, I just looked at him and said, go F yourself. And he said, I'm guessing he had never heard that, or hadn't heard it very often, because he shot lightning bolts out of his head. And I not only was banned from the Columbia lot, but my agency was no longer allowed to have any of their clients on Columbia lot. He goes, it was a pretty bad day. But the very next day, he went and met with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers wanted him to be Rock Hudson's son in Giant. And Dennis Hopper said, well, if I can get the part in Rebel Without a Cause, I'll do it. So he not only got a contract with Warner Brothers that day, but he also got signed on to be in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean and Giant with James Dean. Here he is, I see him. So Dennis Hopper put on some great performances early on, and this was 1955 that he was getting this deal at 18 years old. But all would not be well for very long, because he would be requested to be in The Sons of Katie Elder, a Henry Hathaway picture, and Henry was 50% owner of 20th Century now. Look at this. Now Dennis was a method actor, and method actors believed that, look at that, that is wonderful. Method actors basically believed that for a good performance, the director should just kind of step out of their way and let them create it. Well, in this case, Henry Hathaway had specific things that he wanted Dennis to do, and they battled through the entire picture. Well, at the end of the picture, the very last day, the very last scene of shooting, Henry said, "Look at those film cans right there." Dennis said, "Okay." He said there was a stack of film cans, and he said, "There are 4.5 months worth of film cans right there." And Henry said, "You have battled me every day of this movie. Today you are going to do everything exactly the way I want it. You are going to say the lines the way I want them. You're going to pick up whatever I want. You're going to do it the way I want. Or we're going to be here for 4.5 months and you won't go back to Warner Brothers and work until you're done here." And so for that entire day they battled. Dennis Hopper received calls from 2 different people at Warner Brothers telling him to just quit the shenanigans and get back to Warner. He eventually, in the evening time at 11 p.m., he said they'd even brought in sleeping bags. They had ordered all their meals and everything, really waiting him out. And he said he gave them what they wanted. When he was done, Warner Brothers dropped his contract, and he was basically blackballed at the age of 24. Now, he wasn't going to give up, so he had made a pretty healthy amount of money in those times. He had been acting in Hollywood at that point for about 5 years, so he decided to move to New York and start studying at the Actors Studio just religiously with Lee Strasberg and work on his technique. And at the same time, he did what we're doing here today. He carried around a camera with him everywhere he went, and he ended up becoming friends with all of the great artists of the pop movement, Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol, Jasper Johns. He would go and photograph them doing different things, and so he would capture this great moment in American art history as a photographer. And the great Mr. Hopper was not only a great photographer, but he was a great artist himself. He became a painter, started having art shows, and with his photography he also ended up photographing a lot of the civil rights marches, a lot of the civil rights moments with Dr. King, and a lot of what was going on in that era. So he was not only an artist, an actor, a photographer, a documentarian, but he would eventually decide, I want to make the movies. Even if Dennis Hopper was blacklisted, he wasn't going to let it stop him. And he started making his way back. He said he couldn't really get that many acting jobs in the 60s in Hollywood, and his house had burned up in Bel Air in the early 60s in that fire, so he had lost a lot of his original paintings. He was actually doing a photography show that night at a gallery, and so he said, all of my negatives were saved, but I lost all of my paintings. And he ended up not wanting to paint for 20 years. He experimented with creating art through machines. That didn't go so well. He was doing the photography for a while, and then they came up with the idea for Easy Rider, something that would change the course of filmmaking history. And you can see right here how influential it is. I mean, look at all those bandanas, all those biker bandanas. This was something that was, we're very lucky it came out the way it did, honestly, because when they first started even making it, the crew that Dennis had working with him really made things difficult and didn't really want to do the shots the way he wanted. They didn't want to film things the way he wanted. And when the investors looked at everything and they saw the footage that they had already done, they said, well, the crew didn't give you anything to work with. They didn't help you at all. So they greenlit everything else to come, got him a better crew, and Dennis really did all of this. He directed this whole thing. And like he said, people later have now complained saying, hey, you know, maybe you were doing too many drugs. But he said, we didn't see the drugs as like a deterrent or a hindrance. We saw it as something that was just helping to fuel the creativity And, you know, even if we didn't have that stuff, we were still gonna make this movie. And this ended up being a movie that they put $350,000 into making, and it ended up coming out grossing, he said, $50 million. And really changed the way movies had to be made, because back in that day, like he said, everybody was doing studio pictures. They weren't really going on location as often, so we figured, hey, if they're gonna hang out inside, we're gonna go out and use the world. And they filmed this cross-country trip of these bikers. However, they did not film anything in Texas. Even Dennis said, I didn't want to deal with, you know, Texas at that time, trying to film a hippie movie. Man, what a career. What a career. Then of course, Apocalypse Now and Blue Velvet. He directed a ton of stuff, did Colors, the Gang movie. Just a fantastic history. Now, he ended up coming out here to Taos apparently when they were doing Easy Rider, and he found a really interesting house for sale, and it's still here, so we're gonna go take a look at it. But I really wanted to come and pay homage to Dennis Hopper, because this guy really did an amazing body of work. And he even said, you know, he's been very open. He said when he had to give up doing the drinking and drugs, it was an insane hobby for him at that point. He said he was drinking between 24 and 36 cans of beer a day before he switched over to rum. He said he was doing like, what did he say, 3 grams of Coke a day. Said it just gotten really out of control. And what ended up happening was he got locked up and they put him on antipsychotics. And this particular antipsychotic they put him on had a reverse reaction where he ended up getting Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's, he said, that only happens for like 5% of the people. But he had that for 3 months, where he said, I couldn't even raise my hand to put my cigarette to my mouth. And he said, I was in a halfway house at that point. And he said, I just decided to call a girlfriend of mine and say, like, hey, take me back to Taos. And on the road back, I told her I was gonna kill myself when I got back here. And she called some people, got me to my doctor, and the doctor looked at me and said, you need Kogenta. And apparently that was something that they gave him 8 shots right away. And he said within no time, I was standing up, I was able to pull my wallet out of my pocket, and that was my eye-opener. He said I gave up drinking, gave up drugs, gave up everything. And he said what really helped him get through it was Willie Nelson called him and said, hey, I heard you're kicking it. You know, a good way to stay out of the bars is to take up golf. Why don't you come down here and we'll teach you how to play golf. And so he said he went down there and started playing golf with Willie. And the first time he went out, Willie said, we don't really teach people out here. We just tell them to hit the ball until you hear the turkey gobble in the cup. But man, yeah, he had a pretty eclectic collection of art that he collected, not only of his own, but of Marcel Duchamp, and he was a big fan of Picasso. And then of course, you know, he was friends with Lichtenstein and Warhol, so he had a lot of those originals. He had a really fantastic art collection. But yeah, the first time I think I ever saw Dennis Hopper, you guys will laugh, in anything was, I think it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This is a great monument for him because it's really well done, and yet it's still modest, you know? Which is what he wanted. And it was great. He said I thought when I came to Hollywood, I thought I was the greatest actor there was out there until I saw James Dean. And I asked him, I said, how do you do what you do? And he said, I don't act, I just do. I don't think about what I'm doing, I just do it. And he said he kind of took that with him. But what also is interesting is that when he was in Apocalypse Now, that's kind of what he was like in real life there for a while, walking around with all those cameras around his neck. He said that his original part was, he was supposed to have the part that Scott Glenn got with the snake around his neck, but they decided to switch it And his stipulation was, he said, I will only switch it if I get to do a line or a scene with Marlon Brando in this. And so that's what the agreement was. However, when they put that in, he didn't even get to do the scene with Marlon Brando because Marlon Brando had not been prepared for this movie. A lot of people know he came in overweight, so they had to shoot him with like a shadow, and he wasn't prepared. He hadn't read Hearts of Darkness, and so that was something that Coppola took him out and read to him. And I guess after this happened, Dennis had a dinner with the two of them, and Dennis had this red book in his pocket that like the troops or whatever there had given to people coming in. And he said, "Did you read the book yet?" to Marlon. Marlon thought he was talking about the riverboat cruise and that, and flipped out and refused to do the scene with Hopper or anything. So they had to shoot Marlon scenes on one night, and then Hopper would come in the next day and they would shoot his scenes the next day. Pretty crazy. He passed away not too long ago. About 10 years now, yeah. Now, Taos was really the place that Dennis called home for a majority of his life. He always came back here. He even filmed things back here. And where we're gonna go now is the house that he purchased and he lived in from 1970 to 1978. It has a pretty cool story for Taos itself, but it's where he edited and did all the preparations and everything for the last movie, if you remember that. It's a very artsy, very kind of strange picture, but it was all done there. So this was kind of an interesting moment to just happen. There was a guy out going for a bike ride, and he was riding through the cemetery, and he said, "Are you related to Dennis Hopper?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just here visiting." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Yeah, I've lived here a long time. I've met him numerous times." He said, "I used to see him over at the pottery shop over there because he owned that building." And I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "It used to be called Mary Wyckoff Pottery, but she passed away a few years ago." He said, "In fact, in that shop, they used to keep his motorcycle from Easy Rider." He said it was there up until she died. It might still be over there. So I'm gonna see if I can find out where that address was and swing over there and see if I can ask some questions, because the guy here said that Dennis's brother also lived in town here. I think one of my favorite things about Dennis Hopper here was that he wasn't a guy that just believed in doing one thing or even multiple things. He considered himself a creator, and he said, if you're a creator, you feel dead if you're not creating. And so he spent his entire life creating. So when the last picture came out, that was kind of like a bomb, and the studio wanted him to re-edit it, and he didn't want to do it, and then they shelved it, and after all that, he just quit making movies and started doing his art again out here. When Dennis bought this house, it was called Los Gallos, and he ended up calling it the Mud Palace. Look at this place. It's kind of interesting. Same with that one. There's just kind of interesting things to look at around every corner here. I think the Mud Palace is now a hotel. I mean, there's only 10 rooms. Not only 10 rooms, but for a hotel, that's not too big, but that was the size of his place. And he used to have everybody out here. He would invite John Wayne, Georgia O'Keeffe, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan. You name it, they were probably out here. Here it is, the entrance. It's a historical site now because before Dennis Hopper had it, it was owned by Mabel Dodge Luhan. And then after she died, her family members took over the ownership of the house for about 6 years, and then they sold it to Dennis Hopper, and he found it when he was out scouting and shooting Easy Rider. So this is the first thing I see when I pull up. Now they say that when Dennis Hopper moved out here, he was wanting to make Taos the basically the independent filmmaker capital of the world, and he was trying to entice his friends to come out here and buy property and do the same thing he was doing, and so he would let them all stay here, this house we're gonna see. Alright, so it looks like they have a public visitation time from 10 a.m. till 3, so let's check it out. Here's the house. Wow. Look at the chickens up there. Walk down here first. Alright, let's go look around inside Dennis Hopper's house. Look. Wow. Kind of cool that you can just come and walk around Dennis Hopper's house, isn't it? Yeah, like I said, the list of celebrities that used to hang out here was pretty endless because he had a wide variety of friends. And here's an old picture of the house. Now the way Dennis Hopper talks about it, this was like his favorite house, and why he ended up getting rid of it, it was in the 70s. He was just having financial trouble from all the drugs and all that stuff, and put it on the market, not thinking that anybody would buy it. And then when he was in Germany, they notified him that it had been sold, and he actually thought he had already taken it off the market, so he tried to get the sale stopped and they couldn't stop it. So wow, I can't believe we get to walk through so much of his house. Wow, what a big place. Imagine Joni Mitchell or Anthony Quinn or Bob Dylan or any of those people out here hanging. Here's the kitchen. Man. He edited all of the last movie here, like all of it, and then also did a lot of painting here, so definitely a creative retreat. There's the office, and here you can see when it was built. Here's a good picture of Dennis inside the house, and here he is out riding his horse. And of course there's Billy and Captain America from Easy Rider. Alright, let's head out of Dennis Hopper's house. Look at all these awesome birdhouses. go over here in a second. Look at the back part of the house. These are some of the different rooms. Man, just think of all the great minds and the great ideas that would have passed around walking through the same way that we're walking. I'm just trying to give you every angle as though you were a guest here, since that's what this place was for, entertaining his guests. And you can get a better angle of the whole house here. Take a look at this. I think this is, oh, I've seen photos of him right in front of that. That's crazy. This is the back of the kitchen area. In the guest house. No bell, but very similar architecture. Take that in. Well, my friends, we are going to call it a day. I hope you enjoyed exploring a little bit of the life in the gravesite of Dennis Hopper. What an amazing human being. Thank you for watching, Donnie Gutierrez. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I'll mail these sunglasses out to you as soon as I can. We'll see you all tomorrow from Taos, New Mexico. Goodbye.